Welcome back to Around the World today. I'm your host, Terry Davis, and this is episode 9 of series 7. In this episode, we're talking about and taking a hard look at how government policies over the last 20 years have failed to address the pressing issues facing the UK's transport system. From the railways and roads, buses and airports, we'll explore the missed opportunities, the half-hearted measures, and the persistent problems that continue to plague the nation's transport infrastructure. Let's start with the railways. The UK's rail network has long been a point of contention. After the privatisation wave of the 1990s, the government promised a more efficient and comprehensive system. But what did we really get? A fragmented network where different private operators run various parts of the service, often leading to confusion, inefficiency, and high ticket prices. For years, passengers have endured overcrowding trains, frequent delays, and ever increasing fares, while there have been attempts to bring more control back under public sector, such as the creation of Great British Railways. These measures have often been too little, too late. The long-term vision for rail transport has been sorely lacking, with investment focusing on headline-grabbing projects like HS2, while neglecting on the bread-and-butter services that most people rely on daily. And there's a great example of this in the north of England, where services don't match what people are getting in the south of England. There is a whole mishmash of funding, and the way the railways were just broken up and parts sold off and then parts added onto this franchise, and then it's just a mess. Because, like, you have intercity services. Take Great Western Railway. They run intercity services. They run local services, and they have like a whole yeah. It's just a mishmash of, like, I don't know, different operating models. And then before that, there were smaller franchises again, and then they just enlarged the Great Western franchise to add other franchises in, and this is where they are now. So let's move to episode 1, because that was episode 3, 2, 4, even. So if we go back to episode 1, when we were talking about buses, and next we turn to buses, often the lifeline for people in rural and underserved urban areas. Over the last 2 decades, government policies have largely ignored this crucial mode of transport. Deregulation in the 1980s led to a free-for-all in the bus industry, with private companies focusing on profitable routes and abandoning less lucrative areas. This has left many communities isolated, with limited or no access to public transport. Despite numerous promises to improve bus services, including the recent Bus Back Better strategy, progress has been slow, and even funding cuts at the local government level have exacerbated the problem, leading to the service reductions and fare increases. The result, a sharp decline in bus ridership, which only worsens traffic congestion as and air quality in our towns and cities. Now, this is true because, like, every government says we're going to fix buses and we're going to fix this and we're going to fix trains when they come in. But if the funding model ain't there, the operators can't operate the route because, like, the deregulation and all of this made it illegal to operate a non-commercial route. If you're not making a profit, you can't run it because, like, your company could, in time, be unprofitable itself. I understand this. However, it's a public service. So it has to, if there's a service like this, it has to be funded by your local authority. But your local authority has had budget cuts from your central government. And this is what happens. So they talk about it in one sense, but cut with the other. Hmm. Now, let's move on to airports. We did 2 episodes here. We talked about different models of ownership. And the UK's approach to airports and aviation has been another area of inconsistency. On one hand, there's a level. There have been efforts to expand the capacity with projects like the third runway at Heathrow. On the other hand, regional airports like Cardiff have been left to struggle despite their importance to local economies. Government support for aviation sector during COVID-19 pandemic was patchy at best, leading to job losses and financial instability for many operators. The long-term vision for aviation in the UK remains unclear, with the environmental concerns increasing, clashing with demand for increased capacity and connectivity. Brexit doesn't help, does it, people? Do you know what I mean? Integrated transport. This was episode 5, and this was originally going to be the last episode, but we continue going. And you may remember that perhaps the biggest failure has been in the area of integrated transport. The UK has struggled to create a cohesive system that allows for easy transition between different modes of transport. While cities like London have made strides in this area with systems like Oystercard, the rest of the country lags behind. The result is a disjointed transport experience that makes travel more difficult, expensive, and time consuming than it should be. And it should be, do you know what I mean? It should be easy. You should be able to get on, leave your house, walk to a bus stop, get on a bus, then get on a train, then get on a plane if you need to be. But you can't, can you, people? Well, a few planning points. Government efforts to address this has been sporadic and underfunded, with a lack of clear direction and commitment. The failure to integrate transport efficiently has significant consequences, not just for convenience, but also for the environment, public health, and public economic growth. There's a lot of mess here that, do you know what I mean? Just the Department of Transport so far has to deal with. This is 20 years of misuse, mismanagement of infrastructure, and government wonder why there, and these political parties wonder why there is a lack of growth in this country. Most of our infrastructure has been privatized. It's run for competition against other competition. It's not run for the public good, meaning that, your staff ain't happy because, like, when they're commuting to your office or commuting to the factory, they're going to put up with this, a destroy, commuters trying to get into the cities face great drawback. I often joke with people where I live, when you go 20 minutes away out on a train west of where I live, it's like going back 20 years, or even in some cases 30. You don't get a train for like 2 hours in some places. Um, and then some trains bypass the stations. It it's not, and these are little villages and little places along the way, and you wonder how much, if someone's living there, how do they travel to work? If they work in the city and stuff, they're not getting the train, and they're definitely not getting the bus, because the bus is like every 2.5 hours, or even one in the morning, one in the afternoon, or even better, one on a Tuesday and the return journey then Tuesday afternoon. So, like, farmer town services. But and then, like I said, the train. Yeah. Now, there are things that can be done for integration. Now, in the 90s and the 80s, that regulations were taken away, but they can be brought back now under, like what we've got here, Transport for Wales, a public body, or Transport for Greater Manchester in Manchester, or Transport for London in London, and so on. Belfast, they never act in Northern Ireland. Public transport was never privatised. It was in the UK. It is still nationalised. The trains still national. Most of the bus services are still nationalised, and I believe there's a coordinated approach as well by the government there, but there isn't here. So I'd be interested to see if the differences. Talking about differences, and this is a plug for the next part of the series, when we're going to be looking at the British overseas territories. We're going to start taking a journey around the world, people, to those areas that are a part of Britain. They are British. They are our overseas territories. We're going to learn about some of the areas like Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and so on. And we may do a little bit on Empire, because we have to touch on there, because they're the resemblance of the remaining parts of the British Empire. So we're going to look at different policies and devolution in different ways on how they're governed, and some touristy stuff, and we're going to look at their infrastructure as well. So transport, planes, and I know that St Helena has only just had an airport in the last few years, because I was doing this for looking, and I find how they used to use and get their supplies quite interesting, and I'm hoping that I can direct you to a documentary on when we come to look at St Helena. So, what do you feel that our transport system in the United Kingdom has lacked any consistency? One consistent area would have been from government to make it on the same day that the government legislated that buses had to become accessible for wheelchairs. On the same day, what the government should have done is said, well, no, you've also got to put in next stop announcements. What government should have done there is insisted across the board that there was full accessibility of public transport. But to this day, there is, I believe, no actual legal requirement for the operator who runs buses to actually put next stop announcements. If there is, many operators are failing on this drastically. And then you go to the operator, and this is where the operator says, basically, it's for the local authority to put this infrastructure in place. So the local authority has to put trackers on the bus stops. Meanwhile, the buses themselves have trackers now. So there seems to be an argument about who will provide the funding for the equipment on the buses. Now, if we're talking about public transport, shouldn't it, or been put on, especially that by 2020 most buses had to be accessible for disability. Meanwhile, are they really accessible? And this goes to the crux of government legislation. Are they really accessible for people with learning disabilities, for people who are visually impaired, or for the blind? See, next stop audio announcements also have a benefit for tourists if you're new to the area as well, because it tells you where you are. Sometimes drivers do forget they are human. The machine doesn't. And that's my rant anyway. In conclusion, now, for the last 20 years of UK transport policy has been marked by missed opportunities, short-term thinking, and a failure to address the fundamental issues facing the sector. The priminical or the half-assed approach taken by successive governments have left the UK with a transport system that is disjointed, inefficient, and increasingly unfit for purpose. As we move forward, there is an urgent need for a bold, coherent strategy that prioritizes sustainability, accessibility, and integration. This means rethinking how we approach transport policy, with a focus on long-term investment, clear goals, and a commitment to public service rather than short-term profits. As we move forward, thank you for joining me on this journey through the UK's transport challenges. As we wrap up this short part of the series, I hope we've shed some light on the critical issues that need addressing and the potential paths forward. Stay tuned for future episodes of Around the World Today, where we continue to explore the key themes and stories shaping our world. Thank you for joining me for our little look at transport.
This week's episode has come to an end, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.